Drinking coffee can actually slow down your cellular aging. And if you want a little...
Oh, I like you. I like this. Everyone that's a coffee drinker is very happy right now.
I like the taste of dark roast, but it turns out that
Me too.
medium roast is actually the best way to get the most bioactives. The specific one is called chlorogenic acid. If you want the most potent bean, get organic coffee beans.
Hello out there, superhumans. Welcome to the Switch for Good podcast. I'm Dotsie, and my better half, Alexandra, is being a truly extraordinary daughter today as her mom broke her arm last night. So she is with mom while I go it alone today with our awesome guest. But Alexandra's very sad because we have both been really excited for quite a while, actually, about having Dr. William Li on the podcast. So please allow me to introduce him, and we are going to jump into an extraordinary conversation. It is possible to turn back the clock on our metabolism, burn fat, and increase longevity, all while being able to enjoy the food we eat. According to our guest today, yep, it most certainly is. Dr. William Li is an internal medicine specialist, scientist, and New York Times bestselling author. His groundbreaking work in the field of angiogenesis, which is the process of developing new blood vessels in the body, has led to 40 new medical treatments for cancer, diabetes, and obesity, just to name a few. Dr. Li wrote the fascinating Eat to Beat Disease. In his new book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, Burn Fat, Heal Your Metabolism, and Live Longer, Dr. Li shatters some of the myths that we have been conditioned our whole lives to believe about metabolism, weight loss, and the role fat plays in the human body. I am ready to myth shatter in this post-fact era that we seem to be living in. I am pumped to have Dr. Li on to give us the truth based on science and research. So welcome to the Switch for Good podcast.
Thanks, Dotsie. It's a pleasure to be on. And I share your passion for myth busting.
Yes, I'm happy about that. I have heard quite a few of your interviews, and you speak, I personally think, poetically about metabolism, because there's a lot of myths about it, and there's a lot of confusion about it. And sometimes when we have specialists on and they mention metabolism, it tends to just get kind of wandery, and it's easy to go down deep into the rabbit hole. But you speak about it just very clearly, and I can understand what you're talking about. You say our metabolism does not slow down from age 20 to 60, which, you know, I was amazed. A lot of people are even just hearing me say that right now, because we have definitely been told that people gradually gain weight in those years, and most attribute it to, oh, my metabolism slowed down. So tell us about our metabolism kind of throughout our whole life. And I know that sounds like a long explanation, but just give me some bullets, because your newest book, which I mentioned, Eat to Beat Your Diet, really focuses on this.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, you know, as a doctor, I went to medical school being taught metabolism by my professors, pretty much in the same way that I think most people can go onto Google and search metabolism, and in 2 seconds, you're going to get inundated with a lot of scientific descriptions of what sounds like a super complicated process. And yet everybody knows inherently what metabolism is for them. It's the amount of energy I have. It's, you know, how my body controls weight. And so one of the reasons I wrote this book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, is because so much of our ideas of metabolism and dieting and body fat have been really loaded topics, right? I mean, you think about it, when you think about body fat and you think about dieting, immediately the whole discourse has been fear, guilt, shame, judgment, and it really makes everything rather unpleasant to think about.
It's like it's our fault that our metabolism is slowing, right?
Exactly. So, you know, look, I mean, I'm a scientist, and so vascular biologist. So one of the things that scientists do is that we're able to put on our scientific hat and basically say, you know what, we don't know anything. Let's just go in there and explore and see what the truth actually is. So I wrote this book with a completely open mind to saying, you know, even the stuff I was taught may or may not be true. Let's go figure out what do we know in today's time? And so here is the answer. Now, metabolism can be explained in a very complicated way, but I like to share my understanding in a simple way. Metabolism is, very simply put, how our body gets the energy it needs to fuel our activities of daily living. So, in fact, it's very similar to how we drive a car. So if you have a car and, it's a gas car, you get in your car for one purpose only, which is to go from point A to point B. You don't give any thought during that ride to how the car's carburetor and fuel injection system goes into the engine and primes the pistons or anything like that. You don't care. You just want to go from A to B. And yet that's really how our body is as well. All we care about is getting to A to B. But like a car, we actually have this process inside us that has to be fueled up, just like we go to the gas station to fuel up your car, fill up our tank. In the cases of our metabolism, surprisingly, our fuel tanks for our car are attached to the side of the car. You fill them up with the nozzle. Our fuel tanks for our body actually is healthy body fat. Our fat is our fuel tank. And so, in fact, it's a critical part of our health. You want to actually fuel health. I mean, and listen, you're an athlete. You're like a super athlete. So, if you actually lose all of your body fat to like as close to zero as possible, it actually compromises your ability to perform. So keeping, there's a whole thing about having bad extra body fat, but having too little is also not good. So you really want to have the right amount, okay? And the right amount is actually to have fuel tanks around. And then like your car, your metabolism is going to be able to draw that fuel and power up your arms, your legs, your heart, your brain, all the pistons, all the pieces in your body to get you from point A to point B. That's what our metabolism is. And the secret to our metabolism is the quality of the fuel, when we fuel up, and how we actually treat the body, just the same way as we car. If you drive your car like a maniac, it's not going to last as long. It's not going to perform as well. If you actually fuel your car up all the time, you might risk overloading the gas. And if you put low quality fuel in your car, it'll run okay for a little while, but over the course of the life of your car, you're going to actually degrade the car. And so I like to tell people to think about metabolism as that process that our body uses to get fuel, you use fuel.
Okay. So this makes me think about different styles of eating in terms of timing, what you're saying. So as an athlete, and then, now not really an athlete, but I exercise every day. And I've always felt best if I eat small amounts of food, throughout the day. I mean, I probably eat 6 times a day, and I feel amazing. So I haven't had any inspiration to change it up or to try intermittent fasting or intermittent diet. But we hear a lot about intermittent fasting these days, and we've had people talk about it on the podcast, and I know people that are doing it. So when you're talking about our metabolism, right, and getting the energy we need to fuel our daily living, I'm curious about different timings of eating. And is it different based on just you and who you are? Or is there something to this intermittent diet thing? I'm still probably not going to try it because I feel awesome, but I do not like the bonk, right? I learned that as an athlete. So I feel better when I'm just slow, little amounts of food all throughout the day.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's very important to understand that as somebody who studies food as medicine, time and time and again, what we're discovering is how individual every person, single person is, and different from one another. You're different than me, and vice versa, and from our next door neighbor and our family members. And that's perfectly fine. But there are some general rules of thumb. And I'll tell you, when we actually, the reason that we want to eat, feel like eating, is because our brains, the gas gauge in our car is in our brains, tell us that our fuel tank is running on empty. It's going towards empty, and it's time to put some fuel in the gas tank. And we need to pay attention to our body. One of the things that I always teach people is listen to your body. You want to actually pay attention to what makes you feel good and what your body is gravitating you towards. So, for example, when you feel hungry for your small meals, it's your body telling you, your fuel gauge is telling you, hey, Dotsie, let's put a little fuel in the tank right now. And that's totally fine as it works for you. What you should know is that when we need fuel in the tank, we eat food. One of the things that happens is that as we put food in our body, our insulin levels go up naturally because our insulin, working with a fat hormone called adiponectin, actually draws the fuel from our food and stores it into our fuel tanks, which happens to be our body fat. And so, like people go crazy about like insulin spikes and glucose spikes.
Yeah.
You know what? I sort of want people to kind of chill out about that, because those things do happen. But if you listen to your body and be reasonable, your tank is running on empty, go fill up. Don't eat too much. Don't overflow your tank. Okay. If you're at your gas station and when you put the nozzle in and it goes click and the gas tank's full, you put the nozzle away and you drive off. Now imagine if there was no clicker, okay, and the gas tank filled up, what would happen? The gas would come out of the tank, spill down the side of the car, around the tires, around your shoes, and guess what? You would be standing in a dangerous, flammable mess, toxic mess. That's what happens when you overeat. So another part of listening to your body when you're eating, and I'm going to talk about timing in 1 second, but another part of listening to your body is pay more attention to when you're satisfied with eating versus when you are full and bloated, right? So you can stop when you eat slowly, more when you savor your food. Most people around the world that really enjoy, like cultures that enjoy their foods, they take their time eating and they're eating and enjoying that flavor. And at some point you're going to go, wow, like I feel okay. You don't have to have that bulge in your stomach that basically says, man, I am full anymore and I'm going to burst. And I think that what we've gotten to so often is this habit of eating until we're bursting or feeling like we're going to burst. Listen to your body. Stop eating when you're satisfied, but before you are full. That's also listening to your body. Okay. Yeah. And you can do that by eating a little bit more slowly as opposed to wolfing food down. Because when you wolf, you can easily overeat. All right.
Which would be an argument for eating and just focusing on eating and not watching TV or a movie or doing 10 other things, like really just being there in that moment with the nourishment of the food. And you can then tell if you're full or not.
Yeah, exactly. And the cultures that are healthiest, like the Mediterranean culture or Asian cultures, in my book, I call it Mediterranean style eating, which is how I eat. Think about it. In those cultures, very rarely do you eat alone. You eat with other people. Okay, so it's not you and your device scrolling. You're having a conversation. And in the Mediterranean and in Asia, often the conversation when you're sitting down to eating is talking about the food. Right. And so that's another kind of like point of departure to sort of like the way the habits that we've actually been accustomed to. Let's talk a little bit about timing.
Right.
So I always tell people, listen to your body, eat when your fuel tank is a little bit low and you need more energy. But most of us have grown accustomed to eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All right. And this whole hubris about intermittent fasting, which, by the way, is based on good science.
Yeah.
I think that when good science kind of picks up momentum and it becomes trending, then people wind up kind of going gaga over it, and then it becomes something else. So let me explain to you what actually happens when we sleep at night, which is the time when we all intermittently fast. So when you go to bed, you're not eating, and when you're not eating, it's called fasting. And what happens when you're not eating is your insulin levels naturally go down. Now, when I told you when we're eating, your insulin levels go up. And as soon as insulin levels go up, our metabolism shifts gears like a race car driver to basically say, oh, we're putting gas in the tank. Let's absorb that fuel into our body. Let's focus on absorbing it. Let's not burn it. So it's just like a car at a filling station. You turn off the engine when you're filling up your tank. Okay. Now, when you're sleeping and you're not eating, you're fasting, insulin levels go down. That's when the gear shift box goes to switches your metabolism from loading up on fuel to burning fuel. So when we're sleeping, our metabolism shifts gears into fat burning, fuel burning mode. When we're sleeping, we're actually burning down extra energy that we don't need in our body. All right. So
are you saying we can sleep and fat burn at the same time?
that's exactly what I'm saying. That's what actually happens.
You're going to be very popular on this podcast.
You are actually losing
Yeah.
harmful body fat when you're sleeping. So here's what I'm telling you.
Wow.
Intermittent fasting is a valid way of losing harmful body fat, extra body fat, because you're burning fuel. Now, I know there's this whole thing about 16 and 8 and disciplining your eating, but let me just tell you, everyone who gets 8 hours of sleep, I know that's idealistic hours, but let's just use 8 hours. Okay. Let's say you go to bed at 11 and you wake up at 7 in the morning. That's 8 hours. You're burning your fuel during that sleeping time. Now, let me give you a little fun tip. Let's say that you eat dinner. I don't know, a typical American dinner time is 7 o'clock. Let's say that you eat an average amount of time, like spend an hour eating dinner. Okay. This is not, Spain where you're eating at 10 o'clock and, for 3 hours and then going to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, but you're eating at 7 o'clock and going to bed at 8 or stopping, you put your dishes away at 8 o'clock. Now, instead of then snacking next to the television and eating dessert and eating a bedtime snack and eating the pizza before you go to bed, what I like to say is that when you put your dishes away at the end of dinner, you then basically say, that's it. I'm not eating anything else until the next day. All right. Now you eat at 7, stop eating at 8. Your insulin levels are going to go down. You're not going to eat even when you're sleeping. So it's 11 o'clock to 7 o'clock is 8 hours. You've just added from 8 to 11, 3 extra hours of fat burning. Yeah. And when you burn down body fat, your metabolism rises. I'm going to talk about normal, healthy lifetime metabolism. 1 second. It'll put all this into context. So by not snacking at night, not eating after dinner, and then taking advantage of your natural sleeping metabolism time, you're actually going to burn extra fat. Now, here's what I do. All right. And everyone's different, but this is something this is just how I live my life. When I get up in the morning, I don't do what my mom taught me to do when I was growing up. My mom used to say, get up, go roll down to the kitchen. Let's eat some breakfast, fuel up your brain, run to the school bus and get to school in time. All right. No, we're adults. We're grownups. We don't need to do that. So when I get up in the morning, let's say for the sake of argument, I get up at 7. I take my time getting dressed, take a shower. I'll go downstairs and I will catch up on the news. I might read my emails. I might go for a walk. All right. And it'll be about an hour between the time I wake up before I eat anything. And sometimes I'll even skip breakfast, but now let's do the math. 8 o'clock, put the dishes away, not eating. 8 to 11, 3 hours of fat burning. 11 to 7, that's 3 plus 8 hours, 11 hours of fat burning. Now you don't eat for an hour after you wake up. That's 11 plus 1. It's 12 hours of fat burning. 50% of your life is now focused on burning fat. Now, why is that important for your metabolism? It's really important because when you burn extra body fat, you're allowing your hardwired metabolism to rise to the surface, and then your metabolism will actually improve.
Is it almost like a reset? Would that be like a metabolism reset every 12 hours?
Every single time you go to sleep and you don't eat, and you wake up, your body is hardwired to reset itself. Okay. And of course, the quality of food that you do eat while you're eating does make a difference, right? Because it's just like the quality of gas you put in your car. That'll actually make a difference. So all these little pieces matter. But I want to actually talk a little bit about why having your body burn extra body fat is helpful for your metabolism, because that's really important.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So I thought I understood human metabolism as a medical doctor, and you're talking to my patients with diabetes or cardiovascular disease or obesity, and you're giving them the usual spiel. But I can tell you, everything changed in our understanding of modern human metabolism in December of 2021. That's not that long ago. So 2 years ago, everything we knew about human metabolism changed. Now, first of all, let me just tell you some of those assumptions that I used to make. I used to think like I think most people, you're born with a fast or slow metabolism. My sister was lucky. She's skinny as a rail. She can eat anything, and she's always skinny, right? Me, I've had to fight with my weight and what I eat. I can't help it. Okay, that's what I thought. Second, I always thought like when there's teenagers and they're bouncing off the walls and they're eating 2 or 3 dinners, right? And you're like, my gosh, this kid's metabolism must be going through the roof because they're growing. So I used to think that teenagers, puberty is when the metabolism is really escalating. And then during middle age, of course, we're all conditioned to assume what we see with our eyes is that when you hit your 40s or 50s, a lot of people change their body shape and they really, really struggle. And it must be their metabolism naturally slowing down. So people who hit that magic window, 40, 45, like they groan. They go, oh man, now I'm gonna be screwed. I've got to fight twice as hard. Everyone says that. That's an assumption. All right. Well, I will tell you that every single one of those assumptions is wrong. Okay. And let me explain to you with this discovery that happened in 2021. There was a researcher named Herman Ponzer. He's a researcher at Duke University. He worked with 90 colleagues from 20 countries. This is a massive research project. And they studied 6,000 people from 20 countries, men and women, young and old, different cultures, different diets, different holidays, different comorbidities, different diseases. And what's amazing is they studied people that were as young as 1 week old, newborn. And they studied people as old as 90 plus years old.
That runs the gamut.
That's the gamut right there. Okay. And the amazing thing is they studied human metabolism. They wanted to know, okay, from the first week of life until 90s, what does human metabolism actually do? And the way they got at this is they studied everyone in the exact same way. So how do they do that? Well, they gave everybody a drink of water. Okay. Now, this water, which we know is H2O, right? That's what water is. H is hydrogen, O is oxygen. And what the researchers did, they tweaked the hydrogen, they tweaked the oxygen so the atoms could be measured. Okay. And so they gave everybody this thing to drink, babies to old elderly people, and they were able to measure the metabolism through their breath, through their blood, and through their urine. Because the H and the O, the hydrogen and the oxygen from the water, you can measure. And that actually is a reflection of what the metabolism is actually doing in their body. You can throw it into a computer and it'll calculate your metabolism. Okay. So what they did, they found of this 6,000 people, when they measured it, the results were all over the place. Okay. So the first results it was just chaos. Everybody had different metabolism. Yeah, just exactly like we thought. Metabolism is a big mess. We're never going to be able to figure this out, but we live in the age of supercomputing. So what they did is they used artificial intelligence, and they knew how tall, they knew how old and how the age and the height of every subject. Okay. And then and the weight. And then what they were able to do through artificial intelligence and algorithm, they were able to subtract the effect of on their metabolism of excess body fat. So whatever the number was for 6,000 people, they were able to calculate that they have too much body fat, and if so, they removed it. Now, when they subtracted the effect of excess body fat on metabolism, the results was like removing the cloak off the statue of David for the first time. Suddenly, human metabolism across the entire lifespan, from 1 week old to 90 plus years old, became crystal clear. And what they found is that if you remove extra body fat, human metabolism is pretty much the same when you're born. Everyone's born with more or less the same metabolism. It makes sense, right? So when we're all born, our hearts work the same way, our livers work the same way, our brains generally work the same way. We're all hardwired the same way, okay? Now, what happens after that is when we're running around our life. But here's the pattern that was discovered. There's 4 phases of human metabolism. From birth to 1 year old, our metabolism skyrockets. Okay. In fact, it's so high that at 1 year old, your metabolism is 50% higher than when you're an adult. So a little 1 year old's metabolism is 50% higher, 150% what an adult is. All right.
Which is why they're hungry every 3 hours.
All the time.
All the time.
And why it is so important that we think twice about what we're exposing our infants to, right? Microplastics, obesogens, endocrine disruptors. Man, we got to do a rethink of everything. That fluffy teddy bear, the whoopee, the pacifier. Man, we better start thinking about that stuff because the little baby is taking up everything like gangbusters as quickly as possible. So number one, phase one, okay, 0 to 1. From 1 year old to 20 years old, that's puberty. The time that I told you I thought the kids are bouncing off the wall, eating 2 dinners, metabolism be haywire. Nope. It's going down, 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 down from 1 year old. And in fact, it goes down to adult level. So at you're 20, the teenager's metabolism after 19, 20 hits adult level. And then from 20 to 60, and here's the mic drop moment. The human metabolism was found by this research of 6,000 people to be absolutely rock stable. It's hardwired not to go down by itself. 20 to 60 adult years, all of your young adult years, your middle age years, your working life years, up to your retirement years to 60, it is rock stable. I'm going to come back to explain why people do gain weight during that time, but this is how our operating system is. And then from 60 to 90, it does go down a little bit, but only a little bit, by about 17%. Okay.
This explains the freshman 15, because that's when I got chubby. That's 17, 18, 19, where it was dropping.
Well, and I will also tell you that what happens, remember I told you to get to this pattern of 4 phases, the researchers removed the effect of excess body fat. So now you throw more body fat in there and you completely sit on the metabolism and it goes down. So we used to say a slow metabolism causes you to gain weight, right? It's the other way around. Excess body fat slows our metabolism. Another myth shattered.
Okay.
All right. We're all born the same. Our exposures, our lifestyle, we're fed, the quality of food, how our parents raised us, our behaviors that we undertake as teenagers, the freshman 15, what you're doing, what you're eating, the pizza nights, et cetera, all those things affect whether you're gaining extra body fat. And the moment you start gaining extra body fat, it's like what they had to do in this experiment. When you throw in that extra body fat, the metabolism goes down. When you remove the extra body fat, metabolism rises to its hardwired level. So what I'm telling you is that human metabolism's hardwired like the operating system in your laptop. So Dotsie, if you were to go out to buy a computer, same model as me on opposite ends of the country, you pull it out of the box, we both plug it in and boot it up. The operating system of our computers should work exactly the same way. That's human metabolism. Now, what happens is that you might be downloading something. I might spill some coffee on mine. You might actually drop your computer. I might let some dust get in mine. And guess what? That slowly starts to change our operating system. And that's why our metabolism is all over the place. Everyone is so different because our lifestyles are so different. But there is a perfect metabolism that we're hardwired to actually be able to groom. So why do people actually gain weight in middle age? Why do women gain weight?
Because we're eating more and moving less. Therefore, we're slowly or quickly gaining more excess body fat. And excess body fat is what slows the metabolism, not our age.
Bingo. And by the way, hormones also make a difference because when our hormonal milieu changes, our brain changes. When our brain changes, our stress levels change, our temperature regulation changes. So all these changes that do happen naturally as part of our reproductive life may influence our brain and may influence our behavior and our lifestyle choices as well. On top of that, think about it. When you're 40, 45, 50, the things that we all have to worry about are very different than when we're 20 years old. Okay. We're worried about the economy. We're worried about our jobs. We're worried about the climate. We're worried about our kids. We're worried about all this extra stress compromises our ability to actually be able to ward off developing this extra body fat. So it's like why do traffic jams become so terrible? It's not one traffic light. It's not one accident. It's the domino effect of all these things that converge. That's why people gain weight in middle age. But the good news is,
let me ask you a question. So is stress the cause of the weight gain, or is it because you're stressed, you're eating more, moving less, and then are putting on extra body fat, or is stress itself?
Both. The answer is
Okay.
both.
Oh.
Stress, the epinephrine that is released by your brain that normally for athletic performance, for fight or flight response, for solving problems, acute problems. Look, that in a short term actually improves your performance and actually helps you burn body fat. But when it's actually released all the time, actually it undoes your ability to burn. Your metabolism continues to actually want to actually store more energy as opposed to burn it. It's trying to conserve the energy. So you actually wind up gaining more weight when you're chronically stressed.
Chronic is always almost always bad, and acute is usually not so bad, even with injury and inflammation.
Exactly. Same deal. Okay. So the good news is that this research has revealed something about who we are as humans, which is that we have a hardwired system, and our metabolism really is under our control. And even if we're middle-aged, even if we're struggling with obesity or diabetes or metabolic syndrome, or just sort of aesthetic weight gain, and you're not comfortable with how you look, you can actually yoke it under control by burning down extra body fat. What you eat, when you eat, and how you eat can all make a difference.
Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want.
Speeding up metabolism for a lot of us might be means losing body fat, but all fat isn't created equal. I want you to talk about the different kinds of fat and how the body decides, if you will, where to deposit what.
Okay. One of my favorite topics, because think about the fact that when we say the word fat, those people who are listening or watching this, we're hardwired in society to kind of like shudder when we hear the word fat, right?
Yeah.
So think about it. I'm sure everyone has this experience. You shower in the morning, you step out of the shower, you're drying off, and out of the corner of your eye, you look in the mirror. And no matter who you are, you're going to see or a lump or a bump that doesn't make you happy, right? And so automatically, body fat. Then you step on the scale, and if that number isn't the exact number you were hoping for, you curse yourself. And so immediately, we start thinking about body weight, body shape, body fat in very negative terms. And in fact, if you go to the grocery store, I know, you're vegan. So but even if you just wheel your cart by the meat section and you see a ribeye steak with a big rind of fat, look, people just go, I hope nobody eats that. Okay. Right. I hope they don't sell that. So our relationship in terms of just even recognizing the word fat is very negative. But in fact, there is a time in our lives where fat is nothing but good. And that's when we see a baby, a big, fat, chubby baby is a healthy baby. Right. It doesn't make us shudder. It makes us smile. Yeah. Right. Just that I watched your face. The moment the image came into your face, we smile. So we know that fat can't be all bad. So this led to the research I did to try to figure out, what's the dope on fat? All right. Well, it turns out that fat is not all created equal. We've got 2 different colors of fat. The same way that, if you've ever had to paint a room, the walls of your room. What do? You go to the paint store, you go to the paint section, they've got all these swatches of colors. And let's say someone told you to paint your room in 2 colors, just to make it interesting. You might pick one swatch and then another swatch, and then you bring the paint cans home, and then your brushes have to be different colors. Same way that fat is created in our body. There's 2 colors of fat. There's white fat and there's brown fat. And white fat is the stuff you see under your chin, under your arm. It's the muffin top, it's on the thigh, it's on the butt. That's the stuff that we can see in the mirror, and the stuff that we usually want to get rid of. Okay. But the things we see with the white fat, the part we see isn't the most dangerous stuff. It might be the least pleasing, but it's not the most dangerous to your health. The most dangerous to your health is white fat that's stuffed inside the tube of your body. So whether you're a big body person or a thin person with a thin tube for a body, you can stuff extra body fat in there. And that extra body fat is dangerous. And so that's the part that you want to get tame or burn down. And then brown fat is the other kind of fat that is not lumpy bumpy. You can't see it in the mirror. And it's really interesting because it was only discovered in humans in the last decade or 2. It's paper thin. It's down the side of our neck. It's behind our breastbone, a little bit under our arms, a little bit in our bellies. And in cold temperatures, or when we eat certain kinds of foods like chili peppers or tomatoes or onions or bok choy or mushrooms or citrus, there are factors in our foods that light up our brown fat, and our brown fat, when it's turned on, burns down extra harmful body fat, starting with the dangerous stuff in the tube of our body. So good fat can fight bad fat, and you can eat in order to turn that process on. That's the amazing part. You want to fight fat, eat the right kind of food.
Yes, I've heard about brown fat on this podcast, and so you could say it's kind of the good kind of fat. The other white fat that is, you said definitely it's the part you can see, right? It's on your bum, it's on your muffin top, wherever. Where's the other white fat that you mentioned? Is it around our organs?
Yeah, it's called visceral fat. It's in the tube of our body. Okay. And it's packed in between our organs. So think about this.
Okay.
It's invisible because each of us have this unique body tube.
Yeah.
All right. And when you stuff it with organs, they're all contained in the tube. If you start adding fat to it, you'll stretch the tube. Think about bigger waistline. Okay. Now you need a bigger belt size. All right. And when you shrink your waistline, you're losing harmful body fat. All right. So that's actually visceral fat. Visceral means gut. Yeah. And I want to tell you, it's what people used to refer to as skinny fat. So women who are thin can still have very dangerous amounts of extra body fat. I'll give you an example. If you wanted to ship some fluorescent light bulbs across the country, you would take your light bulbs, go to the FedEx store, and you would ask them for a thin box to ship your light bulbs. And then I don't want these things to break. Let me buy a bag of peanuts. All right. Not great for the environment, but let's say you buy them anyway. And you pour the peanuts into the box, and now you're cushioning the light bulbs. And then you're like, man, but I want to use all these peanuts up. And so you force and stuff those extra peanuts into that box. You really, really shove every last peanut in. All right. Now that box is pretty darn stuffed with peanuts. Okay. Then you're going to still tape the box shut. You're going to force that box shut and tape it shut at arm's length. That box is still skinny, but inside it is packed with those peanuts to burst into the gills. That's what skinny fat is. And so thin people also need to worry about excess harmful body fat.
Yeah.
And thin people can actually change their metabolism because they're building this up. And by the way, you know where the first place that this fat forms?
No.
Okay. Most people would think that skinny fat, the first way you would know in a thin person that they're getting too much skinny fat is by looking at their waist.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
My belly's getting bigger. Wrong. The first place that harmful skinny fat forms is on your tongue. Your tongue is the first place that gets
I should have
fat.
guessed that. I want to get into that because I want to talk about snoring. I should have guessed. I knew that part. Okay, so you're really saying that looks can be very deceiving for somebody that is very thin from the outside. I had a roommate in college, Denise, who in college for me was, late 80s, very, very early 90s. And it was the thing to be, almost anorexic looking, right? Like that was what was in. And so she was so skinny and she looked so great in her jeans. The little tiny belt would go around. But Denise ate McDonald's twice a day. And that's it. She did not have very many foods that she liked. And I worked in the drive-thru at McDonald's. So she would always have me bring after school. But she was one of those that was, she'd eat like 3/4 of the cheeseburger and like half the fries. It's like, who does that? I mean, I don't know anyone that can get fast food and eat just like part of it.
Right.
So she was eating, I don't know, probably only 800 calories a day or something. But I always remember thinking, it just can't be healthy. It just can't be healthy. She looks great, but I'm guessing she had a significant amount of fat, a significant amount of white fat inside that, who knows how her health is now, but
maybe just starting to bloom as a 19-year-old or a 20 or
right.
20-year-old, but a lifetime of young adulthood like that is definitely going to build up harmful internal body fat.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the tongue because I wanted to ask you about snoring and its link to visceral fat.
Right. Okay. So snoring, is often due to excess tissue in the back of our throat. So we call it sleep apnea sometimes, is, people who are overweight or obese will often be snoring and they don't get a good night's sleep and they're tired all the time. They do the sleep study and then their doctor says, oh, you've got sleep apnea. And sometimes they do surgery to cut out some of the extra tissue in your, that is one medical thing that happens. But guess what? A study has shown that in thin people who actually gain excess harmful visceral fat, one of the first places they gain it is in their tongue. And the reason they gain visceral fat in their tongue, which might be a surprise, is that the tongue is actually made of 3 parts. A lot of people don't know this. Mm-hmm. The tip of the tongue, the front of the tongue, first part, is like an acrobat, Cirque du Soleil. It can do all kinds of magic tricks. The middle of the tongue is really strong. It moves food from the left to the right, so it can be chewed up. And the back of the tongue is like a beanbag. It allows food to slide down to your throat after you've chewed it. And the back of that tongue, that beanbag part, is 1/3 of it is made out of visceral fat. Normally, it's a fatty tongue. Okay. And so that's where visceral fat naturally grows in your tongue. When you start gaining extra visceral fat, that's one of the first places it starts to grow in the back of the tongue because it's already 1/3 visceral fat. And now that visceral fat starts to grow. So what's a consequence and what's a connection to snoring? Mm-hmm. Well, one of the first tip-offs that a slender person might be accumulating dangerous extra body fat that you cannot see in the mirror is because their bed partner goes, hey, honey, do you know that you've been snoring? Now, why would that be caused by, and they're like, oh, yeah, I know. Well, have you checked out your weight? Yeah, I'm gaining a little weight too. And here's what's happening. When you're sleeping, your whole body's relaxed, okay? And your tongue is also relaxed. Mm-hmm. When your fat tongue is relaxed, it slides down the back and it blocks your airways. So you start snoring. You wake up as well. So this is one of the early telltale signs of people that are gaining excess visceral harmful body fat is when they actually start snoring, when they didn't snore before. Now, by the same token, when you actually work on lowering extra body fat, you can also skinny up your tongue back to normal size.
Okay. That's a hot tip because that's your kind of like your first indicator, like,
early warning sign.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And those are important for a lot of reasons. Okay. I want to move into your first book, Eat to Beat Disease. You talk about 5 defense systems of the body. And I mentioned a few in the intro: angiogenesis, regeneration, microbiome, DNA, protection, and immunity, and how each of those defense systems can be activated or deactivated by food to heal and have optimal health.
Yeah.
Can you share with us how the microbiome and angiogenesis affect our weight. And then what can we do with food to maximize their positive effects?
Okay. Big topic.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, our body is just like we're born with a hardwired metabolism. We're born with these 5 hardwired health defense systems. They were formed in the womb. We got them when we were born. And when the moment we hit the ground running and crying and doing all the things that babies do, our health defenses are firing in all cylinders to protect us from disease. So our health overall, our life is not just the absence of disease. It's really the result of these health defense systems, the blood vessels, the regeneration, stem cells, the microbiome, DNA repair, and our immune system all working on our behalf. And so when we get sick, it's because our defenses, our shields are down in some way, shape, or form. And when we actually want to stay healthier, we raise our shields. You can raise your shield with good sleep. You can raise your shield with exercise. You can raise your shield by lowering stress. And very importantly, you can raise your shields by eating the right foods. So my first book was about how do we actually raise our shields by eating the right foods. Well, I can tell you because every one of these health defenses, your circulation, stem cells, gut microbiome, DNA, and immune system is linked to our metabolism.
Yeah.
Part of the way that our 5 health defenses protects us is that it protects our metabolism as well. When our shields go down and we start getting chronic diseases, our metabolism can be also derailed. You need a good blood supply, angiogenesis, in order to deliver the hormones that tell us that we're hungry or not hungry, or to deliver the insulin to our muscles. And so if you have compromised circulation, your shields are down for your blood vessels, your angiogenesis, man, your metabolism is not going to work so well. In our gut, our gut contains our gut healthy bacteria, about 39 trillion of them. And the bacteria live, their nest, their home is in a part of our large bowel, our large intestines called the cecum. And our intestines is continuously renewed, mostly while we're sleeping. Okay. Stem cells come out and rebuild it. It's like making a new bed. Okay. And if you actually if you have a compromised regeneration system, it's like being in a hotel with no housekeeping for a week. You're not refreshing your sheets. You're not actually cleaning up the room, and now the gut microbiome is not going to be as healthy. And so now your gut health starts to be compromised. And when your gut bacteria are compromised, your metabolism doesn't work as well. Inflammation goes up. Your blood cholesterol your blood lipids go out of whack. Your insulin sensitivity changes. All kinds of things, actually, bad things happen to your metabolism. That's an example of that. And then let's talk about the immune system inflammation. Look, our gut bacteria not only grooms our metabolism and helps our metabolism stay streamlined, but it lowers inflammation as well. When we gain extra body fat, okay, in addition to derailing the metabolism, that inflammation will cause our body fat to derail, our metabolism gets derailed, and when our gut health is compromised, we're not able to lower inflammation. And now the inflammation is kind of like an arsonist, okay, setting fire, not to just a fire pit, but then throwing that match into the woods to light a wildfire. And now inflammation's everywhere. And that's why this situation of excess body fat, even if you look okay, I always joke about this. People talk about the dad bod, right?
Yeah.
You might not look terrible, but you're not cut and you're not lean,
right? And you probably shouldn't look pregnant because you're a dude.
Exactly. But that's the situation where you start gaining that extra body fat, and inflammation starts to be triggered in the body. Now, one of the things that's really important, and of good news, sort of along the themes of your Switch for Good podcast, is that when you actually eat a plant-based diet, you get good fiber for your gut microbiome. You get good polyphenols from fruits and vegetables and nuts and legumes to feed your healthy gut microbiome. That takes down inflammation. That's like taking out a fire extinguisher and just blowing out the excess flames that are actually around. really, really helpful for taming excess body fat.
Okay. So I'm thinking about different foods. I'm thinking about what foods help build blood vessels and for what illnesses that we would want to eat them for. But I'm also thinking about what foods do we want to, instead of building blood vessels, cut off blood supply to the parts of the body, like cancer, right? Like, so you're not feeding cancer with oxygen and energy. Are there certain foods?
Yeah. So let me try to maybe find a simple way to explain it.
Okay.
Our body is really good at maintaining just the right amount of all of our defenses. But if our defenses go down, shields are down, we get into trouble. And sometimes if our shields are overactive as well. If your immune system's overactive, that's called autoimmune disease. If our angiogenesis is overactive, that can feed cancer. So we want to basically keep everything within what I call the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, not too hard, not too soft, but just right. That's what we're aiming for. And like everything else in life, what we found out with research, it's about having balance. You want your body to be really, really well balanced. So what are some of the foods that can take down not just angiogenesis, but take down many of your body's health defenses, like expose you to vulnerabilities?
Yeah.
Well, excess red meat, processed meats, bologna, salami, all that kind of stuff that you find in the deli that we grew up in our school systems eating from the lunch lady feeding us. I will tell you that ultra processed foods, things in a box with 20 ingredients that you can't pronounce, but simply put, artificial chemicals, artificial preservatives, sweeteners, flavoring, coloring, okay? All those things that we eat, they might taste good here in your mouth, and they might even send addictive signals to our brain, but I can tell you in our body, they lower our shields. One box of your favorite snack, in a box, not going to do it. But, you're talking about, like the person you knew who did it every single day over the course of our lives, that kind of pattern will take down our defenses. And because those types of foods counter a healthy metabolism, they actually help us grow extra body fat eating ultra processed foods. And so what you really want to do is to be able to flip the script on that.
Right.
And be able to really protect your shields up. Okay. The way I tell people, like thinking about when you sit down at a restaurant and order off the menu or the drive-through, or when you're actually, planning dinner and you go to the grocery store, think about it. Every decision you make can be a good decision or a better decision. But you don't want to be making bad decisions, right? So don't make the bad decision, make the better choice every single time. That's a shot on goal to protect your body and your health. And that's allowing your shields to go up. So it turns out that foods that tend to increase your angiogenesis defenses, better circulation, also tend to improve your stem cells, your ability to renew and heal from the inside. Also tend to help your gut microbiome. Mother Nature is very smart. She hates to waste. So one thing that's good for the goose is good for the gander. Okay. So things that are good for one health defense are often good for all the health defenses and your metabolism at the same time. And most of it comes back to eating healthy plant-based foods.
Yes. Tell me if I have this right. You talked about making more stem cells. Does calorie restriction make stem cells more potent to fight cancer? Because I heard something and I thought, oh, maybe I kind of have this wrong from what he said, but yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I want to maybe try to reset people's knee-jerk reaction to the word calorie.
Okay.
People tend to immediately make assumptions about calories. Look, calories are just the unit of measure that we call the energy from food. Just kind of like we have a gallon of gas. Okay. Calories is what we call that unit of energy. And what I would say is that let's set calories aside for a second, but to say one thing, when you eat less, you're just putting less fuel in your body. Okay. And when you put less fuel in your body, it happens to be fewer calories. Okay. What happens is you're not overloading your system all the time. So by restricting your energy that you're eating, what that allows your body to do is to reset itself. It actually allows your stem cells to regenerate parts of the body more efficiently. It's going to do it anyway, but it's going to do a lot better when you actually don't overload the fuel tank. So caloric restriction is sort of like, don't fill your gas tank until it's brimming and starting to overflow. All right.
Right.
Yeah, you can get into the trend and cut by 30% or 60%. It is true. I will tell you that lab researchers have found in mice and rats, if you cut back their calorie to 30% of what they normally eat, like restricting 2/3 of your fuel, that's a lot. It's not pleasant. You will extend their longevity for sure. They're going to be real skinny. They're probably not going to be real happy, but they're going to live a long time. And so for me, my approach to this whole thing is don't fixate on calories or counting calories. Get good quality food with good quality energy. Okay. You want polyphenols, you want dietary fiber, you want to have healthy fats and oils. You want to have lots of micronutrients, bioactives that are present in our herbs and spices. You want it to taste really great as well. Trust me, researchers like me who study food as medicine has shown that's the magic mix to activate your body's health defenses, improve your metabolism. And in so doing, by the way, you're going to be restricting the calories that you're going to have anyway, compared to shoving a 3-inch steak down your gullet. Okay. But by eating a little bit less, by lowering the amount of fuel you put into your body, you give your body the chance to actually renew and reboot itself more easily. You're not burning your body's capacity out.
Right. I'm hearing you say nutrient density, like just really like the most bang for the buck.
Yeah.
Is so critical. We've heard some about telomeres on this podcast, but I would love to hear about telomeres from you, their importance, what we can do to keep them long. And something I found interesting because I'm a coffee drinker. Coffee, for example, shortens telomeres, but you recommend coffee for certain parts because of its health properties. Are there a lot of foods that might be good for lengthening our telomeres?
Well, let me clarify something.
Okay.
Caffeine has been shown to shorten telomeres. Telomeres being kind of like the little caps.
Thanks for the correction, not just coffee, right?
At the end of your DNA, your chromosomes. But it turns out that coffee overall, even coffee with caffeine, actually not only slows the burn, the shortening of your telomeres, but it can actually lengthen your telomeres. So drinking coffee can actually slow down your cellular aging. All right. So coffee drinking is actually good. I actually drink quite a lot of coffee every day. And if you want a little...
I like you. I like this. Everyone that's a coffee drinker is very happy right now.
And if you want a little tip, all right, I like the taste of dark roast, but it turns out that medium roast is actually the best way to get the most bioactives. The specific one is called chlorogenic acid. That's chlorogenic, chlorogenic acid. Okay. It's got the most chlorogenic acid. If you do dark roast, the heat actually degrades some of it. You still have it, but it will be a little bit less. Medium roast is just the right amount. And by the way, if you want the bean with the most chlorogenic acid, which also burns harmful body fat, by the way, it can improve your metabolism by burning down harmful body fat by drinking coffee. Okay. And also slowing aging. If you want the most potent bean, get organic coffee beans, because chlorogenic acid is made naturally by the coffee plant as a response to injury. Now, when I say injury to the coffee plant, I'm just talking about bugs nibbling on the leaves and stem of the coffee plant. So when it's grown more naturally in an organic setting without pesticides, the coffee is going to have normal, natural wildlife around it, little bugs nibbling on the leaves and stems, and it's going to respond by producing more chlorogenic acid. Organic beans have about 30% more chlorogenic acid, the stuff that slows cellular aging and improves your metabolism and starves cancer. There's a lot of great things for your body. And so that's one of the reasons to choose organic grown coffee. Medium roast is sort of the technique. So, like I'm a scientist and I'd like to do food as medicine, but I'm a foodie and I like to actually know what's the right way to actually get the most. How do you prepare it the right way?
Yeah. That is awesome information right there. In staying, as we have keeping a disease-free system and thinking about our immune system and how we want to activate the immune system, sometimes we want to calm it. We're not always trying to activate it. And I'm wondering what some of the foods are that can do each of these things.
Okay.
And what are the times that we may want to calm it, to be clear?
So look, I mean, we talked about inflammation,
Right.
Think about acute inflammation as something very healthy and important for your health. It was designed as a rapid response. Our inflammation systems like the EMTs. You call 911 when you've injured yourself, and the emergency response team, the paramedics that arrive to the injured site, are the inflammatory cells. And you get a little bit of inflammation there. Like if you cut yourself, think about it. After a few minutes, after a few moments, actually, the area is red and swollen. That's your acute inflammation, cleaning up, destroying any bacteria or harmful things that might be in the wound. And then, like an EMT, it'll go back to the base, and it's done. You don't need it anymore. Mm-hmm. That's acute inflammation. It's good and important for us. Chronic inflammation, which is when it doesn't go away and it's continued to be inflammation. It never puts out the inflammation. That's really dangerous. Acute inflammation is another way to think about it, is that if you go camping and you're out with your family, you make a campfire and you cook your food and you tell ghost stories over it. But then when it's time to sleep, you put out the fire. That's acute inflammation. It was good for the evening and now you don't need it. So you put it out and you go to sleep. Now, chronic inflammation is if you don't put out the campfire and a wind comes by and blows the embers into the woods, and now you've got a wildfire, forest fire. Okay, now you can't put it out. And that's chronic inflammation. And that inflammation goes everywhere in your body. And when inflammation is everywhere, it disrupts every single organ in your body. And if you have a microscopic small cancer hiding out, or an existing cancer that your doctor knows about, inflammation will trigger it. It's like pouring gasoline onto the fire. It's going to make it grow faster and harder. All right. So there's no situation in which chronic inflammation is beneficial. None. Autoimmune diseases, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, you name it. Okay. Systemic sclerosis, Sjogren's syndrome, all of those things are chronic inflammation. IBD, okay, Crohn's disease, all of these things are characterized by excess inflammation, the wildfire running through your body. Now, your gut, as a health defense, tries to put out the wildfire because it can actually try to lower inflammation. But man, if it's run away, it's kind of like looking at the woods on fire with just a fire extinguisher in one hand. And you're like, man, this isn't going to make a dent, right? And so that's why it's so important to think about diet as an intervention. So what are some of the foods that can lower inflammation? Well, it turns out foods that contain vitamin C actually have been shown to lower inflammation. So what are some great foods that are anti-inflammatory with vitamin C? Tomatoes, broccoli, strawberries, red bell pepper, guava, just to name a few. Okay, citrus, of course.
Yummy.
And all actually lower inflammation in the body. Now, how do we know this actually happens? And it's meaningful. There was a study in Japan, in the prefecture called Miyagi, Japan, where there was a lot of lupus running around in women. And what they found over a long-term study is that those women who ate more foods containing vitamin C, the ones that I should mention to you, red bell peppers and tomatoes, had a much lower incidence of lupus flares, and their inflammatory markers were also lower. Green tea, also a great way to lower inflammation. Got lots of anti-inflammatory power to it as well. And so, in my books, I actually talk about 200 foods in my first book, 100 foods in my different book. Like, this is about bounty. It's not about deprivation. The research has shown us we can lean into the foods that we like, we love, to be able to find something that's not only good, that we appreciate, we like, we enjoy, but it's good and good for us. And to me, That's really the best path forward. If you want to eat to beat disease, if you don't want to have to be on a diet, you want to eat to beat your diet to improve your metabolism, you can love your food to love your health. You can choose wisely. And I tell people, go back to most of the ingredients that I write about are found in the traditional recipes of the Mediterranean or Asia. Go back to the traditional recipes, and you'll find in some of these ingredients the stuff that if you went to a restaurant and you saw them on a menu, or you took a vacation and you went to Italy, Greece, Spain, or any of those Mediterranean countries, like, you're not going to be starving. I guarantee you're going to be enjoying yourself. And that's the point.
Yeah.
I think that the big the big transition we're at with food and health, and food as medicine, is realizing we shouldn't fear our food. Food isn't about shame, guilt, or fear. We now know enough that we can actually make mindful choices and eat those things that activate our health defenses, improve our metabolism. Don't eat in excess, okay? You don't have to go on a starvation diet, but eat moderately. Listen to your body. Stop when you're satisfied before you're bloated, okay? And really try to relax about your food. Enjoy it. Take the time to savor your food. That's really what I believe is important for better health.
Yeah. What I love about you most is it's putting us in the driver's seat of our own lives and how we thrive. And it's so empowering to think about, because we have the power, we have the choices.
100%.
I learned so much. The biggest thing is, again, on the empowerment scale, is we learned from you today on how to raise our shields, right? So I love how you state that, raising our shields. We learned how to lose white fat, about angiogenesis, how the tongue can be a warning sign. That was very cool to learn, and how to fight disease, for sure. And then my personal favorite, chlorogenic acid, and to keep drinking coffee, but switch to organic and medium roast, which is going to be tough, the second one, because I really like my dark roast like you. But
you know what you can do, though, is you can mix your beans. So you get, if you buy medium roast and dark roast, then you can get a little bit
you're
of
the best
flavor.
Oh my gosh. Okay. A+. This is amazing. You've written 2 books about beating disease and losing weight, and they are full of extremely groundbreaking, but accessible science, which is what Alexandra and I love so much. So I'm going to encourage everybody listening to get their own copies, so they have all of this detailed info and the list of foods, like you mentioned, 200 in your first one, 100 foods in your second one, and that just puts them right at their fingertips. So how can people find you? And do you have any more masterclasses coming up soon?
Yeah, well, so if you want to find out more information, come to my website, drdrwilliamlee.com. Sign up for my free newsletter. It comes out twice a week. I take the latest stuff and I just put it out there, because part of my mission is to get people to understand what is the information you can use to cut through all the other misinformation. Find that stuff that is practical and good for you. I do master classes periodically. And if you really are ready to make a change in your life and you want to do a deep dive, I invite you to join me. I'll take you on a journey. I teach 2 online courses. One's called Eat to Beat Disease course, and the other one's called Elevate Your Metabolism course. And it takes the topics we talk about, but really does a deep dive. And you get the foods, and you get the doses, and you get recipes, and it really is. It really is life changing. I've had people from 43 countries actually take this course.
Wow!
And part of the satisfaction I get is I know, because the feedback I'm getting, that people are feeling more energy, are losing weight, they've come off their medications, and they feel stronger and better and more empowered, which is the most important thing.
Most definitely. You are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dotsie. Pleasure to be on.